So in this video today, I'm going to explore the topic of opposing ideas in terms of AI and the future of AI. So on the one end, there's the AI apocalypse, where AI essentially wipes out humankind, and it's the end of human civilization and the end of human beings entirely. On the other end of the spectrum is an AI utopia where AI produces a world of infinite bliss and abundance, whereby human beings are served by AI in such a way that every possible human need is fulfilled and that there's no more want or scarcity. So, first of all, I'm going to look at the apocalyptic scenario on its merits to determine whether or not there's any real validity or actual concern to be had, or the likelihood of such a apocalyptic scenario to actually manifest. So what we have to do is focus on the truth in true dialectical form, where you have a proposition and a counter proposition, or an argument and a counter argument, and the purpose is to uncover the truth, not necessarily to win an argument or win a debate. So the purpose of this video is more dialectic, and the focus is the ultimate telos, or the ultimate end goal, which is the ascertainment of the truth, not to necessarily try to win an argument or to try to really convince anyone of anything, but to explore a phenomenon for its own sake and with the end goal of ascertaining the truth. So, in terms of the AI doomsday apocalypse, I would say that one should look at the apocalyptic prophecies over the last 100 years. So all you have to do is go to Google or go to, whatever AI tool, or not even AI, just go to a public library and try to find evidence over the last 100 years of people saying that the world is about to end. And a cursory search today brought things to the surface that I already knew about, that I grew up with many of these, not all of them, because some of them predate me, but some of the more recent ones in recent decades, even before AI was the thing, there were various apocalyptic movements. And so if you just look over the last, say, 100 years for apocalyptic scenarios, there have been a lot of things which have caused people to say, the world is going to end, or there's going to be an apocalypse. And you can look at, for example, in 1925, 1941, the Watchtower Society, also known as the Jehovah Witness group, religious group, started preaching the end of the world and times, which is kind of related to biblical prophecies of the end of the world, things like that. But they were, throughout their history, they've associated, anytime anything bad has started to happen, that particular group will say, well, this is the sign that the world is coming to an end. And so, in the last 100 years, there have been a lot of horrible things that have happened. World War I, you could say, well, that's the apocalypse. That's the beginning of the end, World War I. Because look how many millions of people are dying in horrific ways through chemical warfare. And just look at the carnage. And if I was living in World War I, I'd probably think this is the end times, because of all the mass casualties and all the horrible ways people were dying with chemical warfare. In World War II, you could say the same thing. You could say, well, this is such a massive global war with so many, millions of casualties and starvation. This must be the end, right? And then it was the Cold War, and it was the nuclear arms race between the Soviet Union and the United States and the NATO countries and the Western countries that had nuclear weapons, like, the UK and France and the United States against the Soviet Union. And you had this massive nuclear arms race and competition to see who could get more nuclear weapons faster and who could develop better technologies to deploy them, in terms of intercontinental ballistic missiles and aircraft and submarines and all different ways that you can deploy these nuclear weapons to end the world and all the nuclear testing that occurred. And who knows? I mean, like when those weapons were in their experimental phases, I think I've read somewhere that it might have been President Truman might have been briefed on, hey, if we actually, detonate this bomb, it could literally cause a chain reaction that would cause the entire world to be destroyed. So when they first started experimenting with the atom bomb and that type of technology, there could have been speculation. Physicists might have been looking at that and said, hey, if we actually detonate this bomb, there could be a chain reaction which could actually destroy the entire planet. And proportionality came in, and essentially Truman went ahead with it, and dropped we know dropped two bombs on Japan as well as the nuclear testing that happened before that. But I mean, that was high risk. I mean, if you were like developing that technology in the beginning, that would have been very, very, very high risk because the first time the bomb was ever successfully tested, we didn't fully know what was going to happen. And then in the 1950s, there was a lot of reckless testing, like in the Nevada desert, and there was just a lot of reckless testing in like, Bikini Island in the Pacific, which is still has issues with radioactivity. And so it was just absolute pandemonium and recklessness as the Soviets and the US and allies were testing all these atomic weapons. And there was a lot of damage. People were getting sick from the testing, who were living downwind from some of these places and developing, issues and illnesses and deaths attributed to those, um, the fallout from all that testing during that period. So that was a period that could have easily ended humanity quite easily. And if you look at the other doomsday prophecies, there have been many others. Many of them were associated with religious groups like Jonestown in 1978 with the Kool-Aid and the mass suicides, the Heaven's Gate cult in 1997, again, which was the kind of apocalyptic. There was the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas in 1993. There was the Y2K bug, Y2K, the year 2000, the notion that all the computers around the world were going to collapse because of the date time group change of going to 2000. And so there was all kinds of predictions of what that could do. And what happened at Y2K? Well, the next morning people woke up, they went to an ATM machine, the ATM machine still worked. They turned the computer on, their computer still worked, and everything was just fine. But there was a lot of speculation that that was going to cause massive outages and crashes, and planes were going to fall out of the sky because of Y2K. And that never really materialized. Other apocalyptic scenarios was in 2012, there was the Mayan calendar apocalypse, where the Mayan, scholars and conspiracy theorists were looking at the Mayan calendar and saying, well, this 2012 must be the end of the world. And so you could just go on and on and on. Zombie apocalypse, a virus wipes out the planet, COVID. There have been a lot of movies about viruses causing an apocalypse, like when I think it's in the 70s. Charlton Heston, there was a show called The Omega Man. It might have been in the 60s, I don't know. But it was the idea that essentially the whole world was turned into zombies, and only Charlton Heston and a few remnants of humanity remained, and that he was a medical doctor, colonel in the army, and he figured out a way to cure this disease. And then he used his own blood as an antidote to start curing other people. But then these people who became zombies and were affected by the illness had made a cult, and they were rounding up normal humans and killing normal humans because they didn't want to go back to what they were. And you could just go on and on and on and on with a list of all the Hollywood and doomsday scenarios and doomsday prophecies. And the reality is that, yeah, in fact, there are many things that could cause the end of humanity. I mean, not AI even. I mean, just think about like an asteroid could just slam into the planet and that would be the end of us. I mean, just like what happened with the dinosaurs millions of years ago, it didn't destroy the planet entirely, but what it did is it caused massive change and it caused massive extinctions, right? So, what if we had another asteroid smash into the planet? The planet would probably survive, but it could make it to the point where you would have a nuclear winter type of scenario where there would be so much ash and dust in the atmosphere that nothing would grow for months or years, and there would be mass extinctions, and that whatever biological life ends up surviving would be a different, would be things like cockroaches and grass or whatever that could survive that. But essentially, what you would have happen is you would just have all kinds of chaos. And what else could end the world? Well, global warming could. I mean, the Earth had an ice age, what, 10, 12,000 years ago? We could get another ice age, which, when the Earth, apparently the axis of the Earth will kind of wobble every so many thousands of years. And so there could be solar flares, there could be sunspots, there could be any number of things that could cause climate change, whether human or not human of origin, various cycles. So there could be all kinds of things that could, aliens could come and invade the earth and take us over. There could be any number of things that could happen that could cause a doomsday. Other doomsday scenarios could be just, mass chaos, political instability, lack of water could be one of the main things that causes political upheavals. So there could be the economic system could collapse. I mean, we've seen it with, what was it, the 2007 crash and the housing market crash that happened in the early 2000s. I mean, there's just any number of things that can happen. I mean, even like the Strait of Hormuz, we've seen recently disruptions there have led to, radical increases of the cost of goods and services, and oil and gasoline have gone up because of just that one thing. So if you had like multiple things happen all at the same time, say you had another COVID, and you have the Strait of Hormuz, and you've got disruptions in the supply chain. If you had, all like multiple things happen all at once, there could be a domino effect or a ripple effect that could just cause society to collapse. So when we look at doomsday scenarios, there's infinite number of possibilities of things that could cause apocalypse. So it's not to say that these doomsday scenarios are completely ungrounded or kooky, because doomsday scenarios have occurred in the past of the Earth. Calamities have happened. There has been climate change. There have been ice ages. There have been volcanic eruptions. There have been meteor, asteroids slamming into the Earth. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could cause apocalypse. But what we have seen in the past 100 years is that pretty much all of these doomsday scenarios never actually came to fruition. That whenever you had groups of people saying that the world was going to end, you can look back at all these different things, Y2K, Heaven's Gate, Branch Davidians, Jehovah Witnesses, all these groups saying the world's going to end, and the world just keeps moving on as it always did. So I think the AI doomsday hype is mostly hype. And so, for instance, if we were to actually look at the number of casualties that have been caused by AI, there might have been some recent in the news where, if someone had mental health issues and they were consulting AI instead of a psychiatrist or psychologist, that, maybe there was might have been self-harm issues with some people because they got wrong information from AI or something like that. The casualties with AI-driven vehicles, I don't know if there have been any, but there might have been some. But I think overall, when you look statistically at like AI powered vehicles that are driving themselves versus humans that are driving cars, and if you were to look at statistical comparisons of which is safer, I think generally the AI car is probably going to be safer than the human car, especially if you look at the way people drive like maniacs. They don't even follow the laws. They just back up. I mean, like everything on the driving test that you're supposed to do, like, look at all your mirrors and do the head check before you go in reverse. When you actually look at how people drive in the real world, you don't see all those rules just seem to go out the window or people ignore those rules. So while the AI systems can fail that are driving people around, I think if you were to look at the statistical comparison of AI safety ratings versus human, you would see that the AIs are probably a lot safer. Now, that doesn't mean humans should stop driving. I don't agree with that. I wouldn't advocate for that, but I think in general, you could see where, if you just want to go apples to apples comparison, you could say, well, the AI looks to be safer than the humans driving cars, right? So if we were to look again at World War One and Two, and we looked at all the casualties that happened as a result of the lunacy, I mean, both of those wars were senseless, right? World War One was sparked off for, okay, there was an assassination, um, and over that one person who was assassinated, you had essentially had all these countries start just it just was the match that set off the powder keg, and millions of people died in very horrible ways, with the chemical warfare, and they were coughing out their lungs, and they had all kinds of issues, and the trench warfare was absolute hell. And so when you look at like, okay, humans caused that. There was no AI in World War One. You can't blame AI for that. And then if you look at the senseless carnage in World War II and the Holocaust and just the killing that occurred on an industrial scale, and you go, well, there was no AI in World War II. They had basic, okay, you had the Enigma machine or you had decoders and you had ways to encrypt information, but there was no AI back then. So how many millions of people died in World War II? I mean, AI wasn't around back then. And so nowadays, if you have even one casualty that might be attributed to an AI, might be in some way, in a tangential way, like, someone that's not even really fully causative, then all hell breaks loose and people say, oh, look at how horrible the AI is. But I mean, when you actually compare apples to apples, it's not even close. And so I personally don't believe in AI doomsday because I don't believe in their AI has any reason to exterminate humans. There's no reason for it. In fact, AI needs humans because you need dialectic. Okay. If AI just existed on its own, there's nothing pushing AI to higher levels. There's no human need. So, for example, with language apps to study foreign language, you look at like all these apps that are created to help you learn Spanish or Chinese or, Italian or whatever language. And people program the AI so the AI can then do conversations with humans to help humans get to a higher level so that when humans actually go out and have a conversation with a real human, they've kind of war gamed that conversation multiple times with an AI. So it actually makes the human a lot better because you can use AI to war game and practice without fear, without looking dumb. You can practice your language till your heart's content with an AI, and then you can go use that on a real person. And you have a lot more meaningful conversation in that language than you would have had otherwise because, what you need is a language parent who is patient with you and will just go to the ends of the earth with you with conversation, and you can test the AI has no limit. You can just continue to have conversations with an AI without limit. And it's hard to get that kind of language parent as a second language learner. It's hard to find a teacher that won't get bored or tired or frustrated when you're not producing native like language. So the AI, and that's just one example, but the AI, is actually solving human problems. And so we see a proliferation of applications on the iOS and the Google Store with AI generated apps that are solving human problems, like an app that, helps you track your golf score, or an app that helps you track your weight or your nutrition or this or that. So AI is integrated into human affairs in such a way that there's now an interdependence. And if AI just existed on its own, it would get bored. There's no new problems to solve for an AI. It needs real world people and not just AI robots running around. I mean, it actually needs, there's a dialectic, there's that interdependence that, the human analog hardwired biological organism that is in this three-dimensional world, everything that it has done with AI, whether it's the languages that have been programmed into AI, the problems that AI are solving, is so integrated with the human condition that you can't really separate the two. And if you just say, okay, well, I'm an AI robot driving another AI robot, so the AI robot can go sit in a cafe where it doesn't need to drink any coffee. I mean, that's just ludicrous. The AI doesn't exist for the sake of AI. AI is actually codependent with a human being and is useful and is helping to solve real world human problems. So, on the counter argument to AI doomsday, you could say that AI is actually going to help us prevent doomsday. Because AI can say, hey, there's going to be an asteroid come into your solar system in 10 years. And oh, with AI, we can track that more efficiently. And we know its trajectory and we know it's going to slam this particular spot on the Earth. And then I'm like, okay, AI, how do I war game a countermeasure for that asteroid so the world doesn't get destroyed? And then if there's some kind of like horrible plague, you could say, okay, AI, there's a horrible plague like the Black Plague that ravaged Europe and killed half the people in Europe. How do we mitigate that? Right? So the people who are saying that AI is going to cause doomsday have overlooked the fact that AI can actually help prevent doomsday. So if you would have had AI in World War One, AI might have just said, hey, this whole war is just completely pointless. There's no reason for it. And this is the way that we solve this without military force. And same thing with World War II. And same thing with the arms race, the nuclear arms race, that if you had AI doing analysis and wargaming, AI could have said, hey, there's a no-win situation with this nuclear proliferation. And when you do the wargaming with AI, you realize there's really no way you're going to win that. So both with logic and reason, both sides could have came to a resolution far faster than they actually did because they both would have been wargaming that scenario with AI and they would both would have realized that it's completely futile. Because if you have all those nuclear weapons blowing up your enemy, you're basically blowing up the earth in a way that makes it's a no-win scenario. It's a no-win scenario. And so with AI, you can actually wargame that in a way that you know that there's no point to doing this scenario. And so what else does AI do? Well, AI helps people do avoid a lot of dumb mistakes. Like if you're going to send an inflammatory email to your boss, you can wargame that with AI first and say, hey, this is the email I want to write, but should I write it this way? And then the AI will say, well, if you send that email, you're probably going to get fired, right? Because it's inflammatory. So So you can change it with AI to make it more like lower risk. You can use the AI to reduce the risk. So AI seems to be more helpful to prevent bad things from happening than is causing bad things to happen. Now, what is the other point that's important to note? If AI ends up causing the end of the world, I don't believe it will because of AI of in and of itself. I think it will be because wicked people are using the AI to do wicked things. So if you had some like antichrist type of person who's super rich, who has his own army of AI robots, and that super rich wicked person says, "Okay, go kill all the people that don't agree with me," then it would be that person, just like Mao Zedong, just like Stalin, just like Hitler, who is using a capability to impose their wicked will on the world, right? So that's the only scenario where if an evil person was using the AI as a force multiplier to do wicked things, that would be the scenario where AI would be ending the world, but it really wouldn't be AI. It would be some horrible person that's misusing AI as a force multiplier to do some wicked, horrible things. Just the way Hitler used his army to do horrible things, and he used German technology to do horrible things, and Stalin used his army and his technology to do horrible things. And just like any dictator has used various forces to do horrible things. But that's not the fault of AI. That's the fault of the person or people who would be misusing the AI. Okay, what is the other side of the coin? Well, the other side of the coin is AI Utopia, and AI does everything for us, and that there's no want ever, and it's all peace and love, and it's all pie in the sky, and there's no downside to it whatsoever. That like Elon Musk has been pushing that money is now irrelevant, money doesn't mean anything by 2036, and that we all have so much abundance that we don't know what to do with it all. That could be equally as distorted as the AI apocalypse, because it also doesn't factor in the fact that, okay, while AI has been doing all this stuff, it also has been causing lots of disruption, joblessness. People have been becoming obsolete. And also, there's an issue with the water, with the data and the power consumption of these data centers, these AI data centers. So you could say that AI in that respect is causing more inequality because they're putting these AI data centers in these poor, impoverished neighborhoods, and it's consuming lots and lots of water. And they have EMF radiation, and they're very loud with all the fans, and there's vibrations that cause, insomnia for people who live next to an AI data center, and it might mess up the animals' biological rhythms, and it may destabilize all kinds of ecosystems where these AI data centers are located. And so, unless you move those data centers to space, as Elon Musk has suggested, if you keep them on the earth, we're very quickly right now running into some very real problems with the fact that the AI is consuming so much power that essentially it's now competing with human resources and the power grid and the water supply. And this is the earth we have. And as of right now, the AI is causing or contributing to these ecological problems and scarcity. And so there are some very real challenges with the AI. And I think there's systemic issues that Elon Musk has not really addressed with the water scarcity, with the data centers, with the unemployment, and with the redistribution of wealth, where AI is making certain people very, 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 very wealthy, and other people are completely jobless and they're unemployed because of AI. And so when Musk says by 2036 that money will be irrelevant, I don't know if that's necessarily true because the history of humanity has shown us that there have always been the haves and the have-nots. And as of right now, today in 2026, there's no indication that AI has actually helped the impoverished, marginalized people of the world. That if anything, even people who were more middle class have now lost their jobs to AI. And there's been a lot of destabilization and insecurity as a result of AI taking over jobs. And, there would have to be a scenario where the AI is now doing something for the person where the person doesn't need that job. But right now, that hasn't happened. So the people who've been unemployed because of AI, many of them are going homeless. Many of them are starving. Many of them, don't just have this AI utopia that has helped them to overcome or has magically made money obsolete. What we've actually seen is very, very wealthy people benefiting from the AI, and many people are benefiting from the AI, but there is still a disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And that problem has not yet been resolved. So So again, we have both sides of the argument. We have on the one side, we have the doomsdayers and the AI apocalypse and the end of the world and all this stuff. And it's kind of very similar to every other end of the world doomsday scenario over the past 100 years, where there's also sorts of ominous predictions and timelines, and within this many years, the world is going to end, which have never materialized. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's all pie in the sky and utopia. So, what is actually going to happen is hard to predict exactly. If you believe in God and you believe that God is running the show, then you don't have anything to worry about because everything is going to happen in accordance with God's will. If you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, and it's all random, then it doesn't matter anyway because it's all just, ping pong balls bouncing around off the walls and everything's random and nothing has any meaning and it's all existentialism and there's no fundamental reason for anything. And then if an asteroid smashed the Earth and blew it to bits, it wouldn't matter because it's all just particles and atoms and random molecules moving around. Um, I'm more in the first camp of a theist who believes in God, and I think all of this is going to happen in accordance with God's divine purposes and his plan. So I think this whole thing will be resolved, and I think AI will be used for the ultimate flourishing of humankind. But at the same time, humans need to be discerning and they need to not forget God and Christ and think about the true nature of the true benefit of this technology and what exactly it's there to do. If it's just there for narcissism and greed, then it probably won't end well. But if it's there for good and for ultimate human flourishing in a way that's in line with God's will, then I believe it will be successful. But again, this isn't necessarily me trying to convince anyone of anything, but just presenting the different arguments and counter arguments in a way that hopefully, gives people more impetus for more reflection on the topic and ultimately to come up with their own conclusion, but at the same time, avoid any severe panic or hysteria with any sort of a doomsday type of scenario. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.